The Bangladeshis call it the forgotten genocide. In 1971, Pakistani soldiers and their local allies killed thousands, perhaps millions of people in what was then known as East Pakistan. Out of the ashes of that conflict was born an independent Bangladesh. I'm Fawzia Ibrahim. In this edition of 101 East, we examine the cost of the War of Liberation in Bangladesh. We're in the heart of Bangladesh's capital, Dhaka, once an integral part of Pakistan. But ethnic differences and demands for a fairer share of resources led to calls for Bangladeshi independence. Tony Bertley reports on the horrific consequences.
This is a crime, a major crime against humanity that went unpunished.
Our girls, our mothers, our sisters, they were violated.
The daily grind of life in Dhaka, a city of extremes in a country which has kept a dark secret that has haunted the nation for more than 30 years, and one which few people outside of Bangladesh is aware of.
The 4-passenger carriage. Yeah.
Tapan Kumar Das is aware. He's a Hindu. He remembers the day, 13th of June 1971, the time just after dawn, and the scene after he and 430 men, women and children were loaded onto a train at Saidpur railway station, 6 hours north of the capital, and taken a kilometre down the track to Calvert 337.
They're crying, help me, save me, save me, oh God save me. But no one there. No one there. They killed us one by one. Only 21 people, 21 young men, we jumped from the train and narrowly escaped.
They, he says, were Pakistani soldiers and their local supporters. He says he lost 13 members of his family that day, including his father, elder brother, uncle and cousins, cut down by swords and bullets and a pre-planned execution. Once this was simply a 6-room private house. It's now testament to one of the biggest examples of genocide of the 20th century. The privately run Museum of the War of Liberation is dedicated to upwards of 3 million people, half of them Hindus, allegedly murdered during a 9-month period in 1971 by Pakistani forces and their allies. For years, few people in Bangladesh spoke about the horrors of that period.
There were people who even didn't know about the Liberation War. They didn't even know about the genocide because there was a systematic policy of erasing that part of history after 1975.
It was a bloodbath that lasted for 9 months. In those days, Bangladesh was known as East Pakistan and governed by Islamabad. When momentum grew for independence, Pakistan launched a terrifying crackdown. Tens of thousands of civilians and freedom fighters were murdered. 10 million refugees fled to neighbouring India, but it led to the creation of the new nation of Bangladesh, but at a terrible cost. It's hard to imagine, but this place of sport and recreation was once a place of execution and butchery. It's claimed that in 1971, hundreds of people, including women and children, were murdered here by Pakistani soldiers and their local supporters. It was one of 5,000 so-called killing fields which were used during a 9-month killing spree, and for which no one has ever been sentenced to any crime. In the grounds of Dhaka University, a memorial to the 46 teaching staff, assistants and students who were dragged from their beds and murdered in what many Bangladeshis say was a systematic attempt by Pakistan to destroy the Bengalis' fight for independence. Even though the world saw what was happening, a combination of international manipulation and domestic politics pushed the issue of the Bangladesh genocide under the carpet.
This story reminds me of the Holocaust stories.
Dr. Hassan is one who has strived to make Bangladesh and the world come to terms with that terrible period at the birth of the nation and to see justice.
If the perpetrators, they don't open up their mind, if they don't confess, how can you forgive? How can there be dialogue? One should open their mind and tell the truth.
He is part of a Bangladeshi group called the War Crimes Fact-Finding Commission, which has just issued a list of nearly 1,600 names of both Pakistanis and Bangladeshis who, it alleges, committed war crimes in 1971. These include some members of one of the country's most powerful religious parties, Jamaat-e-Islam, 3 of whom have served in the government. Abdul Razak is a London-trained barrister and Assistant Secretary-General of Jamaat. He denies all charges.
Yes, we supported Pakistan, but we are not involved with any of the crimes: rape, murder, arson and looting. And no one has been convicted. These are mere allegations. The onus is upon them to prove those allegations.
In the fragile world of Bangladesh politics, the major parties often coveted the support of powerful religious groups, and this is the reason some say they were never held accountable for what happened in 1971. Activists like the Sector Commanders Group have met with the European Union and the United Nations to discuss the requirements for a war crimes tribunal to be set up.
If United Nations is involved with this trial, the trial will carry credibility. And second thing, that once United Nations is involved, no political party coming into power will be able to stop it.
Among the public too, there is a growing sense of the need for justice and recognition that the past cannot be avoided. This is a memorial in Dhaka called Jalal Khanda. It means butcher's den. 37 years ago, civilians had their throats cut and were dumped into a peat well here. Sharikul Islam had a miraculous escape. He demonstrates how they lay him down and try to cut his throat, but the blade was too blunt and he survived. This lady won't forget her chapter in this history either. She was one of 450,000 women allegedly raped by Pakistani soldiers. Many gave birth, some had abortions, and some committed suicide because the shame was too much to bear. She was raped repeatedly over a month.
My life exploded after that experience. It started a fire of pain inside me. The only way for that pain to ease is for the war criminals to be brought to trial.
That process can only move ahead with an official application by the Bangladesh government to the UN. That can't happen until at least next January, when elections are due to be held, so the current caretaker government can be replaced.
For more on the War of Liberation in Bangladesh in 1971, we're joined by Sharia Kabir journalist and author, Sultana Kamal, human rights activist, and Professor Mahbubullah from the University of Dhaka. Sharia, if I could start with you, there are so many events that led up to the Declaration of Independence in 1971 and Pakistan's quest to quell the rebellion. What do you think was the main element, in your opinion, what was the main element that actually sparked this call for liberation?
In 1970, an Awami League won the landslide victory in the election, and it was headed by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and Pakistani army junta, the President Yahya Khan, he declined to hand over power to the elected representatives, and finally that led to this, liberation war.
Sultana, is this the same situation for you? Was it a case of democracy being violated here?
Yeah, that was the last, spark that was actually started the liberation war. But then, as you said, that there were a number of events leading to this, and that's why the liberation war wasn't an event for Bangladesh, it was a process. And the process started from a realization that East Pakistan was actually being exploited and deprived from its rights all along since 1947, when it became a part of Pakistan at the partition of India.
Professor Mahbubullah, was there any other element that you could think of, perhaps, that would have led to this need for liberation from Pakistan?
The people of East Pakistan, the then East Pakistan, they voted overwhelmingly for Pakistan, creation of Pakistan in 1946. But the most unfortunate part is that the people who voted so much, supported so much the cause of Pakistan, was exploited in the hands of the Pakistanis. Basically, it was denial of our economic rights, political rights, and cultural rights. And the culmination of all these denials was the War of Independence in 1971. And as a matter of fact, the then East Pakistan became an internal colony within Pakistan.
And both of you agree with that?
In fact, they always treated us like a colony, you know, though it was a one country. But the Bengalis, you know, we had a very strong Bengali ethnic identity. We had Bengali tradition of long tradition of Bengali culture and other elements. But the Pakistanis, particularly the Punjabi rulers, always looked down on the Bengalis, and they treated Bengalis as subhuman beings and treated East Pakistan, East Pakistan as their colony.
Is it fair to say then that part of this demand for liberation was a need to establish Bengali identity itself?
Definitely, definitely. It was a need to establish Bengali identity as well as to establish democracy, restore democracy in Pakistan or in Bangladesh. It was a fight for democracy. It was a fight for secular humanism.
Sultana, did you expect the crackdown by the Pakistani military to be so harsh, to be so violent?
Not at all. It was absolutely horrifying. We were utterly shocked to see the way they reacted to the people's very peaceful, legitimate demand for democracy, establishment of democracy and recognition of their identity. It was absolutely out of proportion.
Professor, do you agree that perhaps there was absolutely no way that there could be a peaceful transfer of power from Pakistan to what we now know as Bangladesh?
Well, had they been intelligent enough, they should have done that, you know. But instead of doing that, they chose for, you know, cracking down upon Bangladeshi population, Bengali population. So, well, they were telling us that it was not expected, but to me it was not unexpected.
How so? In what way?
You see, when there is a state, and a state is a powerful machine, and it represents a class interest, a vested interest, and when they see that interest is going to be shattered, you know, they become very violent, ruthless, and that's what the Pakistanis did.
37 years on, has Bangladesh achieved what it started to, what it aimed to achieve when it first declared independence?
Definitely, we are now an independent country. Bangladesh is a sovereign, independent country. We have a lot of achievements, you know, but the problem is that 3 million people sacrificed their life to liberate the country. They have been massacred by the Pakistan armies and their local collaborators. Unfortunately, those who are responsible for killing, for genocide, for war crimes, those perpetrators have not been tried. Our independence and sovereignty, it won't be meaningful if we fail to try the war criminals, if we fail to try those who committed war crimes and crimes against humanity during the year of Liberation War.
That's all the time we have for this part of 101 East. We'll be back right after the break. Join us then. Welcome back to 101 East. I'm Fawzia Ibrahim. This week we're in Bangladesh looking at the 1971 War of Liberation. Millions of people suffered. Here's the story of one man.
I'm not proud or happy to be alive. If suicide was not a sin, I would have killed myself. I last visited this place in 1984, 25 years ago. I did not come after that because there is no one left here for me in Saipur. During the War of Independence, my whole family was killed in this house. There used to be a door here. My father was holding back the door like this when he tried to break in. They put a shovel inside the door to force their way in and broke it open. After that, they saw my father and they attacked him. As he was trying to escape, the material of his Punjabi suit got caught on the door. They ran after him and stabbed him here. After this, my wounded father sat down and died at this spot, like this. My second brother, who was hiding under the cot, came out crying and went towards my father. At this point, the Biharis started shouting, "Mil gaya, mil gaya, found one, found one." They then stabbed my brother several times. He collapsed. My mother was stabbed with a bayonet inside. She was crying out aloud and kept saying, "Kill me, but not my sons inside the house." They didn't listen to her. They dragged her all the way out here and buried her alive here in this cowshed.
For more on the effects of Bangladesh's War of Liberation in 1971, we're joined by Sharia Kabir, journalist and author, Sultana Kamal, human rights activist, and Professor Mahbubullah from the University of Dhaka. Sultana, we've heard about the atrocities, we've seen the stories, we know the extent of the violence that happened in what was then known as East Pakistan and is now Bangladesh. Why do you think no one has been held accountable?
You have to go back to the way history took different turns in Bangladesh, because when we became independent, we had the constitution in 1972 and we were just getting settled at that point of time. And within a period of 3.5 years, the leader of the nation, the father of the nation, the first elected president was killed by a group of army officers, and the whole country took a different turn altogether, because you'll notice then the constitution was changed and these people actually looked for different defenses for themselves. One was moral, the other was legal. The legal was the Indemnity Act that they passed later in the parliament, and the moral defense was that they had to do it because they wanted to prevent Sheikh Mujib from selling Bangladesh out to India, and Bangladesh was becoming Hindu dominated and Hindu influenced, so they had to actually go for Islam or Islamization of the country, and that is why they wanted the support of the war criminals who were basically members of the Islamic Party in 1971.
Sharia, is this where we're seeing the rise of Islamic fundamentalism in Bangladesh, because they have infiltrated into the governments?
Definitely. In fact, during this liberation war, Jamaat-e-Islami, Muslim League, Nizam-e-Islami, this Islamist party, they committed genocide in the name of Islam. And that's why, in our first constitution, it was a very much secular constitution, and religious-based political parties were prohibited by 72's constitution. Unfortunately, after the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and the top leaders of Awami League, the pro-Islamists, they grabbed the power and they changed the constitution, they amended the constitution, and they allowed those Islamist political parties to reorganize.
Am I right to presume then you would not be in favor of these Islamic parties to be active in Bangladeshi political life?
Definitely not. Why we should accept them? Because they are responsible for war crime. And most of these parties, they do not believe in democracy. Politically, theoretically, if you go there, programs, and if you
look at... But surely 37 years on, these political parties have been set up by Bangladeshis themselves, and they have shaped the country. And if you want to talk about democracy, surely any political party must have a voice in a democratic process.
Unfortunately, these parties, they never accepted the concept of Bangladesh. As I said that, Bangladesh was created for a secular democratic country. They never accepted secular democracy in Bangladesh. On the contrary, they always, tried to convert Bangladesh into a monolithic Islamic country like Pakistan. 3 million people sacrificed their life for secular democracy. We do not want to see their lives will go to vain. On the contrary, those who are responsible for genocide, for war crimes, or committing crimes against humanity, those who are anti-democracy, they shouldn't have any political rights in Bangladesh.
Professor, do you agree that there is a need for war crimes tribunal to be set up in order to try these alleged war criminals?
He has said that, the War of Independence or the War of Liberation took place on the basis of secular ideals. I think this is a falsification of history, number one. Because in 1970, when the election took place and Sheikh Mujibur Rahman got overwhelming mandate from the people of East Pakistan, and The electoral manifesto of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman didn't have any program whatsoever promising secularism. Rather, he promised to the people that no law shall be enacted against the repugnant to the spirit of Quran and Sunnah. And that's how actually he neutralized the pro-Islamic forces.
Well, there are 2 points here. One, that Sheikh Mujib, when he won the election, he was the leader of Awami League, and Awami League had a different election manifesto. And the idea of secularism actually developed and was established through the Liberation War. And that was the people's aspiration, that we will have a country where no discrimination will be made on the basis of religion, okay? And that is when secularism came in.
You say that there shouldn't, parties should not be discriminated because of their religion.
I'll come
Shouldn't we
back to
then
that.
allow Jamaat-e-Islami
because Jamaat-e-Islami is not simply a religious party. They have a history, and they were against the birth of Bangladesh. And even after the birth of Bangladesh, they constantly, consistently acted against the interests of Bangladesh.
Professor, the issue of Islamic fundamentalism is tied very closely to the alleged war criminals of 1971. Do you think that a tribunal would help resolve the wounds that a lot of Bangladeshis feel?
I think this issue of Islamic fundamentalism is of a very marginal importance for Bangladesh, because Bangladeshi people, they don't accept Islam in a fundamentalist form. Basically, Bangladesh people believes in some kind of liberal Islam.
Right, so you're saying that Jamaat-e-Islami is not a threat? It's not a political threat?
Well, if you don't allow Jamaat-e-Islam to operate openly within a democratic framework, and if they go underground and with their organizational strength, they can create a lot of problems for us.
We're just running out of time, Sultana. I want to give you the last word here. Do you see any way that Bangladesh can heal the wounds of the past and move forward?
Yes, of course, we will have to do it, and we can do it by actually trying the war criminals and actually curbing militancy and violent acts and criminal acts, whoever is perpetrating that.
That's all the time we have for this edition of 101 East. I'd like to thank Sharia, Sultana and Professor Mahbubullah from the team of 101 East from Bangladesh. We'll see you again next week.